All right, this is going to be the last video on the histology tissues, muscle and nervous. Pretty short. There are 3 muscle tissues. There's only 1 nervous tissue. A couple things I really need to highlight with you. Muscles are either striated, which it has these bands in there. You can see the little white lines, or it's not striated or unstriated. Now there is one thing. I don't see it here. If I come, well, it's at the bottom. Okay, I was going to say muscle. When a muscle contracts, it shortens. It develops tension and it shortens. Muscle tissue is either voluntary, which is skeletal. Now that's the muscle that makes up your the muscle attached to bones that you move around voluntarily. Voluntary means you have conscious control. If you want to flex your bicep and ask anybody, you know, do they have their tickets to the gun show? That's skeletal. The other, which is involuntary, would be smooth and cardiac. And cardiac is a little bit different kind of tissue, but smooth makes up all the walls of hollow organs, stomach, small intestine. No matter how much you focus, you cannot constrict your ascending colon. As hard as you try, it's done involuntarily for you. So there are 3 types of muscle: striated, voluntary, skeletal; striated, involuntary, which is cardiac; and then non-striated, involuntary, which is smooth. Yes, and muscle cells are often called fibers because they are super long in some cases. Smooth, not so much, but you usually hear muscle fiber and not cell. And muscle fibers are contractile, which means they have the ability to change shape and become shorter and thicker. And yes, they develop tension. So basically, these produce movement. They don't have a lot of function. Now, the heart, obviously, pushing heart contraction chambers, they push blood through the body. Smooth is moving food through the body or water. It's called peristalsis. And then skeletal muscle will be movement of the entire body, pulling on bones, creating angles, allowing, creating movement. So I'll go through those with you. All right, skeletal attaches to bone. This one's voluntary. Usually called skeletal muscle fibers. They are striated. Movement of the body under voluntary control. Absolutely. In fact, that's skeletal muscle right there. All right, looks like we're doing the whole 3-page thing again. Up here is skeletal muscle. It's striated. Striated means it's got the lines in here. Those are called sarcomeres. Get to that later. Over here is smooth, and this is actually cardiac. Now, so here's a picture from our lab. This is skeletal muscle. See the striations, the lines in there, and then skeletal muscle have more than one nucleus. So they're called multinucleated. So a skeletal muscle fiber has more than one nucleus. And you see all the lines in there. I'm going to stay with this. This is smooth. Smooth is swirly. The ends are tapered. The cells are much shorter. And this is actually a textbook picture. But up there, this is not quite as swirly. But where you find smooth muscle would be the walls of hollow organs. Now I'm going to go back. So here is smooth. Hollow organs, which is stomach, intestine, structure, they're tapered at each end. And then the function regulates the size of organs, moves fluid through the body. Now cardiac, while I have this up, cardiac has a very special structure. It's called an intercalated disc. And all cardiac cells are connected. And those intercalated discs are the part that connects one cardiac muscle fiber to the next one. So they're skeletal, they're smooth, and then here is cardiac. So those lines, see the dark lines? Only cardiac has that. Now cardiac, if you got really close, it is also striated. But skeletal muscle does not have those dark staining lines in there. And that's called an intercalated disc. It's going to connect one cardiac muscle fiber to the next one. And cardiac is striated, and it's involuntary. In fact, the heart has its own impulse. So if you take the second half of anatomy, I'm going to cover that then. Okay, last group, nervous tissue, there are no types. Like, for instance, we just did 3 types of muscle that are under the category of muscle tissue. Skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Nervous does not have that. Now, nervous does have some cell types. Neurons and what are called neuroglia cells, which are those little dots, look like poppy seed things. Those are neuroglial or neuroglial cells. These are motor neurons, and this picture is way far away, but they conduct electrical impulses. So I'm going to go right to the function. Now, nervous tissue is found in the brain, spinal cord, and what are called the peripheral nerves. And it's sensory conduction and motor conduction along nerve fibers. So transmit electrical impulses over substantial distances. Axons are actual nerve fibers, and then conduction of motor impulses away from the brain, and then sensory reception and conduction of sensory impulses from the outside into the brain. So for right now, you got to focus on that. It does transmit electrical impulses. Motor means going away from the brain or spinal cord. Sensory refers to going into the brain or spinal cord. And here's a peripheral nerve. See that coming down this way. If you grab something hot, the reason you know it's hot is you have a sensory nerve conducting that impulse either into the spinal cord, if it's a reflex, or the brain if you feel something that's different temperature changes. That's a sensory thing. So there are 2 cell types, neurons, these, and then what are called neuroglial cells. Now those are support cells. They're more active. Motor neurons are the ones that are conducting electrical impulses, and nerves are made of the axons, fibers of these neurons. So I'm going to go over, all right, so here is, this is a pretty good textbook picture. So there's the neuroglial cells, the little purple dots. This is a nucleus of a motor neuron. See this thing coming off? So there's a motor neuron, and this is actually a picture that's much closer, and then these are the neuroglial cells. Oop. And then there's the slide from our lab. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like half of one there. There's some motor neurons. This might be 1, 2, but it may be trapped under some other tissue. But the dots are the neuroglial cells, and then these are the motor neurons. So yes, sensory reception and conduction of sensory impulses, and motor conductions of electrical impulses. Yeah, motor is causing a movement or a gland or organ to do something. It's going away from the brain or spinal cord. Sensory is going into the brain or spinal cord. All right, I told you that'd be short, so that is all the histology tissues that we are covering. So thanks for joining me.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold